said, what's up, B? Azkaban. Where you chillin', man? I'm in Azkaban. Where you at, dude? Azkaban. I said, what you doing, B? Azkaban. I said, where you at, man? Azkaban. What you up to, dude? Azkaban. I said, where you at, B? Azkaban. I said, what you doing, dude? Azkaban. I said, where you at, man? Azkaban. Yo, I'm just kicking it in Azkaban. I said, where you at, dude? Azkaban. What you up to, man? Azkaban. I said, what you doing, B? Azkaban. Where you at, man? I'm in Azkaban. I go. I'm just getting my brushes set up here, ladies and germs. So in the meantime, where you at, dude? Azkaban. I said, what you doing, B? Azkaban. I said, where you at, man? Azkaban. I'm just kicking it in Azkaban. I say, what you up to, man? I'm in Azkaban. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, what button do I click? Can somebody fill me in on which button to click here? Where you at, dude? Azkaban. What you up to, man? Azkaban. Where you at, B? I'm in Azkaban. Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Azkaban. I'm the man from Azkaban. Come to break some stuff down on my white canvas. I'm drinking water because it's that time of year when Washington is a lot like Mordor. The very air you breathe is a poisonous fume. Where you at, B? I'm in Azkaban. What you up to, man? I'm in Azkaban. What's this I'm writing here? Ooh. It's the topic of the day. Dum dum dum. Where you at, man? I'm in Azkaban. Ooh. Yes, it's like constant sore throat, choky coffee, toxic excitement here in Washington State as the forests burn. I suppose it's an inevitable part of the cycle of forest life, but it's very smoky. Where you at, man? I'm in Azkaban. Okay, so this topic, whew, boy, this is a monster. Let's see. Where to begin? Where to begin? Where to begin? Well, I'm going to start by filling this O in with red. There we go. Okay, so social encounters. I get this sort of question or request a ton, which is, wow, like, systematically, mechanically, what does ICRPG have to offer as far as social encounters? And then as a larger question of, like, how do you make them fun? Or how do you make them interesting? Or how do you run them? Just in general, how do I do these things? And what are they for my game? So on and so forth. There seems to be a bit of a riddle, a mystery, a puzzle within an enigma around this part of the game. Now, normally we put all of our thought into combat. Okay, so let's start to think about the Venn diagram here of playing a session. Okay, we're going to have, this is a Venn diagram. So these represent the activities that we do while we're playing D&D. Okay, first of all, we have hanging out. This pen is just too big. There we go. Hang out. Then we have combat. And then we have RP. That's most of it. That's most of what we like to do. Now, all of the attention, or almost all of it, is all hogged by combat. Why? Because that's where the dice are, that's where the action is, that's where the conflict is, right? So a lot of what we talk about, especially here on Runehammer, is how to make combat move fast, how to make it dangerous, how to make it exciting, how to have it not slog and be over detailed, how to make it, feel fun like an action movie feels. Action movies don't go slow, they're fast paced. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Here's a million things to talk about. Now on the RP side, there's some fun YouTube videos out there about how to role play. Even I've done a few of them. Really, they aren't true how-tos in my mind. They're just sort of almost for comedy value. It's like how to role play a dwarf, and then you talk in a silly accent, and you kind of act goofy, But what really is role playing? Very enigmatic topic right there, because role playing isn't just, wearing your elf ears. Role playing isn't just talking with a British accent, even though all your characters are in like a jungle campaign. Role-playing is making decisions and taking actions that reflect a character that isn't you. But over time, that you realize more and more nuance and subtlety and consistency with that. So really, it's sort of it's your actions, less so than your voice. But we're still going to include that, okay? I can't decide on how big I want my marker. So it's what you do, it's your voice, and it's self-description. Now the interesting thing about this, and maybe one of the fundamentally wonderful things about playing D&D, is that right here I say self-description, but the word self is very interestingly used here because it's not me. I'm Ingrid Bernal. So unless my character is also Ingrid Bernal, a young handsome gentleman who lives in the Cascades of Washington, unless it's that person, then self is actually someone else, and this is the sort of the escapism of the game. Combat is not the escapism. All kinds of board games have combat. All kinds of video games have combat, but they don't have RP. And so you could argue that this circle over here, the RP circle, is the very thing that defines or differentiates our hobby, D&D, from video and board gaming. Now, finally, you have hanging out. Hanging out is your friends come over, or you're online together, you're yucking it up, you're talking about funny stuff that you share in common, blah, 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 blah. That's the one that we all know how to do because that's real life. Now, where we get interesting little tidbits are, like any Venn diagram, where these circles cross. These three areas here. Now, this center area is basically D&D. And by D&D, I don't mean Dungeons & Dragons, I mean all RPG playing. Okay, so why am I even trying to understand this? Because the interesting part's where these crossovers happen. So between hanging out and combat, this is kind of like, we could call this whooping. So you guys have all done this, and I think this is also a lot where the dice action of the game happens, is between these two. So combat itself can be any number of things. It can be the terrain, it can be moving your minis around, it can be, the reveal of the monster, it can be monsters taking actions, being surprised, marking stats down, doing all the fun things of our hobby, right? Then hanging out is none of those things. And between, I think, are the moments that are not inside the game, that are between us in the real world, like hanging out, only they're about the combat. Now, I would actually argue that this little section here, we're going to make it the green section. This little section. Oops. I failed, guys. I failed to get my color. There we go. Okay, this little section here, I would argue this is probably actually my favorite part of playing D&D, is the whooping. This little section. Somewhere between hanging out with friends and doing big battles. Somewhere right in between there is a fun thing. Okay, so anyways, next we have this more interesting one, perhaps, some might say, because it is the topic of the day, which is somewhere between pure role play and hanging out. You have this blue zone here. This is the sort of classic moment that a lot of my work in the RPG community actually struggles against this. This is the sort of how I usually portray it, as a bit of a morass or a confusing sort of lull in a lot of games. It's somewhere between checking your phone and eating Doritos and one or more members of your party having a conversation either with another character or with an NPC or with the DM, sort of in character. And this is really kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Now, down here in what we're going to call the orange zone, I would say this is probably the thing we do the most in our hobby. This is a combination of, well, over here we had, what was this one? This is the swamp is what we're going to call it. And then orange is exciting. So whereas whooping is kind of this casual moment, it's not inside the game per se, right? It's kind of the fun part of the game. It's the high-fiving. Okay, that's a great way to put it. It's because high-fiving doesn't usually happen inside of, Faerun. But high-fiving happens in our real world, and we do it when combat is happening, so on and so forth. But the exciting thing, and you see this in almost every single game session you have, you're in a combat, and on your turn you say something in character, or your character, more importantly, does something in character, such as sacrifice themselves to save another, or, boldly stride into a battle that's probably doomed, or flee from a battle that you as a player aren't afraid of, but your character would be afraid. And so you're role-playing that combat. This is what we do a lot of the time in our hobby, is somewhere between role-playing and combat. And so the swamp, even though it's something I work against in almost all my design work and all my sort of talks and theory and opinion on D&D, today, that's what we're going to freaking talk about, is the swamp. Now, you guys know that I portray it as a swamp because I believe this is a lot of times where the game will break down. This is where the game gets slow or gets hard to tell what's going to happen next, or you have unclear social roles at the table, and so it gets a little awkward at times. Okay, so the swamp. So remember our initial questions. The first one was ICRPG, what's its role here? First, I would like to say that no system can RP. That's my first note. No system can help you roleplay. No game can make your table dynamic and exciting in a nuanced, character-driven way. No game can do that. That is not the purview of the game. The purview of the game is to resolve mechanical questions and to drive things forward, right, in interesting and novel ways. RP has no bearing on the system that you're playing. And honestly, if you hear anyone bringing grief on a game system because it doesn't support RP or something like that, it's complete nonsense. You can play Farkle and roleplay. You can play Gin Rummy and roleplay that sucker. You can pretend to be in a Wild West tavern while you're playing Gin Rummy and roleplay. Gin Rummy is not responsible for your roleplaying, and neither is any other game. Okay, so let's just get that out in the open. Now, secondly, a system can expedite. Play. How can a system expedite play? Well, this is, of course, assuming that you're adhering to said system, the aforementioned system. But it can't make your role-playing fun, but it can say something brutal, like you wouldn't want to do this, but after 30 seconds, your turn is over. That's like written in the rules. That can expedite play. But for that 30 seconds, you could just sit there and be perfectly silent. There's no game that's going to make the fun happen. Okay, let's just get that out in the open. So especially, I'm basically defending, in some ways, the games that I've heard critiqued on this front, mine being one of them. That, oh yeah, there's no good RP in that game. Oh well, that's just you, man. That's not a game's problem. Okay, then finally, so don't look to the system to solve your swamp. But it can expedite your swamp. But it still can't make it fun. And then the final thing I want to talk about is if you have an expeditious form of swamp, you can make it mechanical. Make it mechanical. And if you can make this RP moment, this swamp, mechanical, and this is what we're going to really break down, this term. If you can make it mechanical, you are going to come as close as is possible to your system or your game encouraging or fostering good role playing. There's my thesis, okay? I know that was a little bit roundabout, But that is my thesis, and that's what I want to emphasize beyond all other things during today's video, today's stream, this morning in my jammy. Well, I have one shoe on, but other than that, yes, Farkle roleplay is supreme. Okay, so this is the theory that I want to hit you with hard. If you can make your RP mechanical, no, you still can't guarantee that your role-playing is going to be cool or fun. No system can do that. But what you can do is create the same effect that mechanics create on survival. Whoa, what does that mean? What did I just say? Oh my gato. Oh my gato, Ingrid Bernal. Survival equals good RP. Oh crap. Survival is normally the art in combat of having HP and guarding them. I mean, let's face it, it all boils down to being a bag of hit points in combat, and through really countless forms of mechanical nuance and ingenuity and game systems and agreement at the table, social contract, cooperative narration, all these different mechanics. Everything is in so many games is boiling down to some version of, am I alive because I have points or wounds or whatever. It could be anything, but you see what I'm saying. And we're just going to use the term HP here to be a catch-all for anything that is relating to your character being alive or not. That is what it all boils down to. So what does good RP boil down to? It's the same thing. But let's think of it a different way. Having RPP and guarding them. What the hell is an RPP, you ask? At least that's what you should be asking if you're interested in the content of this stream. What is that? You know how I like to think? This is how I think. We're going to describe RPP in 3 terms because I made 3 blobs. Alistair Hall, the transformation from Hankrin to Ingrid will come in time. But don't knock me off this train, because this is a complex topic I'm trying to hit you guys with here, and I want to take you all the way through. Role-playing points. It's silly, right? Why does that feel silly? Why does that feel silly? Something in our instincts right away say, what? Role-playing points? Seriously, dude? Like, am I going to get a point for doing an accent? Oh, man. Let's start there. Just fight your instinct right now to think this is ridiculous. Because the fact that it feels a little bit ridiculous is telling. And this is where I want to take this little carriage on this bumpy ride. Okay, first of all, you have accents. Everyone knows that doing your voice of your character is like a fundamental staple of the hobby. Now, you may only do it once every blue moon, but it is a big part of what we do. There's just no denying it. Now, most of the time, what you'll do is describe yourself. Well, you know, Hankrin says blah, 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 and then he jumps over the wagon. But every once in a while, you're just like, I'll gut you, you little stinker. And it adds to the game, right? It's a good role-playing point. It's a yes, okay? Next, we're going to call this apropos action. Now, when people do actions with their characters that aren't appropriate, that feel meta or feel counter to their character or feel like power gaming or all these different things, that's not apropos. Apropos action is when someone is inside their character mentally and it shows in that character's actions. Because sometimes that's actually not in the best interest of the character. And that's when you get some of the best role-playing. You guys all know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't need to expound upon these cases. But the most simple one to describe is when a character sacrifices themselves in some way for something that's valuable to the character, but maybe not valuable to the player. And that is awesome role-playing, and it should be spotted, called out, and rewarded. Now, finally, what is finally? What else do you get role-play points for? What else do you have that makes good RP? And this is where I want to get a little bit into ICRPG and my personal theory, and that is, my gosh, it's harsh, but here it is, guys, speed. Get your damn role-playing done. Come on, get it done. All right? Role-playing, to me, starts to break down if it takes too stinking long. Now, this isn't true for all people. This is just my opinion and my taste. I'm not trying to bag on anyone's fun in any way. But for my taste particularly, I think role-playing, like on the scale of maybe Critical Role, of some of those sort of longer monologues and soliloquies, those are beautiful and funny and amazing that those people are so talented they can just bust those out. But to me, extensive role-playing that takes up a lot of time is not fun. I mean, just there it is. And sometimes it can leave some people hanging a little bit. It's one thing if cameras are on you and you need to be enthusiastic and interested while other people are taking their turns. But we all know that in reality, where no one is filming us, if someone is taking a 1 hour long turn, it's miserable. It's not fun for the other players, even if something interesting is happening. It's not fun. And so I think speed is right here. So now we're getting back to survival. Right? In combat, I slowly take away your hit points. That's where the excitement goes. In role-playing, I slowly take away your RP points, and that's what's going to be exciting. What, you say? Ingrid Bernal, are you out your mind, fool? You're going to take away my role-playing? What are you even saying? Let's figure it out. Okay, so if this is what we're dealing with when we're role-playing, and I want to basically hammer on these things. Accent. GM accent. Appropriate action. Dilemma. And speed. Time. Or timer. Suddenly, I have the tools that I need to press these things. Now, remember, I don't have to just destroy these things in a player. I want to press them. Okay? Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're starting to think about how do social encounters boil out? How do we make them mechanical so that they drive role-playing? And the GM accent is the first one. You guys all know my opinion on the GM needing to be the beacon of sort of dorkiness or enthusiastical geekiness, however you want to describe it. The dungeon master sets the tone at a game of how goofy everyone can act and still be cool. You know what I'm talking about. If the DM or the GM isn't just ridiculously enthusiastic and excited and doing voices, then people at the table aren't going to be enthusiastic and do voices because it doesn't feel safe socially. And so this is up to you. So this is your first role when you're trying to create better social encounters, is set thy tone. Now that's still not mechanical though. That's just nuance. That's just cerebral. But next we have one that's mechanical. A dilemma. A dilemma says you must X, and X is unpleasant. This is where you're going to set up a social encounter. A social encounter cannot just be, well, at least for the sake of excitement, can't just be, oh, hello, oh, hi, I have a t-shirt on. Hey, me too. That's great. I love people with t-shirts. Hey, me too. Awesome. Okay. Well, I guess I'll be going on my way then. Okay, bye-bye. That's not going to get you, that's not a dilemma. Now, you've seen a lot of games where this is happening. If you've played, especially for years, you've seen a lot of games where you are socially interacting, say with an NPC, and you're not sure where it's going. Now, maybe something interesting is happening, like, you know, you're greeting the king of a faraway land, but you're kind of just like, okay, well, we've said our greetings, and we're kind of, you know, and you kind of have this looking side to side feeling. That's what I would call not a dilemma. That to me is an unclear role for the player of like, what are you trying to do here? Are we just doing voices for fun. Like, where is this headed? So as the GM, you want to be headed somewhere. The reason that you're talking to the king is blah. And if you don't blah, oh boy, it's going to be terrible. And that's what we're about to get into, is how to design for You Must X. Now, finally, timers, you guys really know how I believe in this, is that, you know, lines are limited. Every single scene that you run in your game has a timer of some type attached to it. It doesn't have to be lava filling the room. It doesn't have to be heavy-handed in any way. It can be subtle. It can be narrative. It can be something. But anytime something is happening where there is no time limit, oh God, kill me. I don't even need to explain the value of this. The time is what's going to give you the crunch and the limitation. You know, I mean, this is the essence of game design, is that you have a limited number of options to get a desired outcome. It's the same thing with social encounters. You need limitation. Total freedom in social role play is doom. So really that only leaves us with one interesting little piece, and it's this piece right here. The dilemma. So what I'm going to propose is the way that you make RP mechanical, is through the dilemma. Now, let's talk about the two kinds of dilemmas that I would like to think about and how I think one is a disaster. Okay, let's go back to black. This is scenario 1. This is scenario 2. This is the truth. And here is the player. What? Okay, so this can be very, very difficult. And this circle here, this barrier, this represents the RP. Oh my gosh, that is probably my favorite diagram. That is insanity. Okay. Okay, now here we have something different, which is the player is in here, and we have outcomes. Okay, in scenario 1, this I think is the most common type of RP that you're going to see in D&D. There is some clue or truth or hidden reveal or factoid or password or something that a character has in their mind. Right? And the player, represented by this red X here, basically picks and pries at the social cues and nuances of that character to get that truth. This happens all the time. So, yes, of course, boobs. This happens all the time. You guys have seen it. Here. Now it's up there. You happy? And this one's down here and there. Okay, don't derail me. And, okay, yeah, Spider MK7. This is a salient question. Do you explain to players that there are timers and what to expect when they're... Absolutely. The awareness of the timer is the fun of it. If I hang you above the laser shark tank and then pull the lever and you're slowly being lowered into the laser shark tank, it's not exciting if you have a blindfold on. It's exciting because you know you're being lowered. That's what makes it so suspenseful and exciting. So you want the players to be fully aware of the time limits on things. But here's where you get into trouble, which is scenario 1, which I think we could call sort of the riddle. Now, it isn't literally a riddle, but it's treated that way. It's like the DM has in his journal or her journal, it's written down, okay, the guard will reveal the password if you mention his daughter and how she was recently sick and got better, and you're very happy about that. Okay, so then there you have your player come up, and they're picking at this guard. They're trying to get clues. They're having a conversation. They're sort of, making small talk almost in a way, trying to get the guard to tell them the password. That's the truth that they're after. And this green line right here is this role play experience. But this kind of role play drives me crazy. In real life, this is a highly interesting form of social interaction that in some ways is almost predatory, which is wanting to extract something particular out of a person when maybe they don't even want to divulge it. And you're playing this game with the DM in a strange dance because the DM actually wants you to get the clue because they want you to play through their content. But they have to come off as if they don't want to tell you, and then you're both role-playing yourselves in this sort of social sort of give and take. And the player is going, what do you want from me? What do you want me to say? I'll say anything. Just what do you want? And this is why a lot of times social encounters will just derail a bit, and they'll say, okay, well, my character has whatever conversation needs to be had with the guard so that I can get the information I need, right? Enough, because it can take hours to do this kind of stuff, especially in the real world. So I would say avoid setting yourself up with your social encounters to have like a sort of a lock and key mechanism, and the key being a specific thing that a player is going to say in character. The lock being the data that the NPC has. And you're waiting for that key to enter that lock. And until that happens, you're just making small talk, right? You guys have probably experienced this in the game. Now, on the other side, this is my favorite type of role-playing. The player is inside this sort of RP bubble. I'm not sure what it is. And simply based on what the player says, not what the NPC knows, but what the player says, it can derive or create outcomes. 1, 2, and 3. What are those outcomes? Outcomes. What are they? 1, 2, and 3. And here's where we get to our mechanical component. 1 is favorable. 2 is as written. And 3 is awful. There is not a preordained social discovery to make with my social encounter. All I'm really doing is giving some flavor to the world. I don't care what my NPCs say, and frankly, I don't necessarily care if the players are realistically interacting with those NPCs. I might be dropping clues with what my NPCs say, but I'm never depending on conversation. Because A, that's just too much work for me. I'm already designing the rest of the game. I can't design conversations. That's so creepy. But what can happen is just through one thing that a player says, even just one line, you can do this. Now, the master of this is Arnold Schwarzenegger, who can say these one-liners with such verve that they're really memorable. Like, I'll be back, right? I'll be back is a role-playing micro-nugget of wonderfulness because it's totally memorable. It makes it awesome when he drives his car through the front of the cop station. And it takes up very little time at the so-called table. It's one little line. So, favorable means it's going to be epic. It's going to be funny. It's going to have gravity. This is something that I think Tim Carney is really good at doing. He has sort of gravity to the things that he role plays. And when his characters take action that matches his words, then it has gravity to it. As written just means, okay, you said a thing, I said a thing, on with the game. Right? And then awful is like, you just insulted the king by saying, you look like a chicken to me, right? Then I'm going to ratchet up the difficulty. I'm going to add guards. I'm going to arm the king, is a sort of a way to say it, right? As the encounter was written before, the king wasn't going to get involved in this fight. But now that you called him a chicken, he's going to get into it. He's a high-level enemy, blah, 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 blah. This, to me, is the ultra-simple form of making social encounters mechanical. It's right here. It isn't looking for a combat that's taking social form, which I think is what even the very question for this video or request was, that kind of thinking. Can you tell me how to do a sort of a clash that's social, right? A conflict that needs to be resolved through social play. That sounds intriguing, right? But then when you really get down to it, very difficult to execute, can feel very awkward and weird. Players are sitting there going, what do you want me to say? I'll say whatever it is you want to move this scene forward. So in theory, it sounds like something that's going to be an interesting option to combat, but then you get it to the table and you're like, what am I doing and how do I do it? Breathing smoke every day is not good for your throat. Whereas the outcome method simply says, okay, before the next part of our story, I'm going to say a thing and you can say a thing. It isn't a clash. And this is another thing that a trap can do. Some traps kind of come at players like, snickering, like, hee hee hee. I have the funniest little trap with the craziest little solution to it. Can you guys guess it? Everybody's like, oh crap, that sounds horrible. Or a trap can just go, yeah, and just hit you with a poison dart. It doesn't ask you to figure out all these little bibs and bobbles. It just whacks you upside the head. And how hard it whacks you upside the head can depend on like how boldly you walked into the corridor. You see how different those mindsets are? If you timidly walked into the corridor, I just go ahead and spring the trap anyways, but it either does minimal damage or just zings right by your face. This is role-playing for a rogue. I'm not asking the rogue to guess at my hidden fact. I am just letting them quickly do a thing, and I am slightly tuning the outcome based on what they did. And then when players start to realize this meta, they realize how to game it a little bit more. And this is where I think collaborative narrative really is born. Players start to see that their role-playing, even in tiny doses, can create favorable, standard, or terrible outcomes. And when that really dawns on them truthfully, mechanically, consistently, and they trust the DM to reward or punish them accordingly, then you get the magic of roleplay. The magic of roleplay is not trying to guess what's in someone's mind. It is gaming the ups and downs of the narrative. Whoa. Just whoa. Now, with all that in mind, there's only one thing that I'd like to add at the end. And you guys know my stance on this and how important I truly believe it is. It is playing this game in turns. Here is a table. Here are some handsome young people enjoying a fine game of Dungeons and Dragons on a Wednesday evening. Now, I have been critiqued in the past. People say, well, if you play in turns, then how can we have natural conversations? Right? Because in the real world, conversations don't really happen in turns. It's very free form, right? And I find this critique a bit frustrating because I don't think that's true. I don't think that when you sit down and you're eating lunch, that everyone just begins talking at the same time. That's not real. That is a false counter case. When you sit down to have lunch and you have your 4 friends, you take turns talking. You take turns talking. And sometimes if someone speaks out of turn, which is a phrase that we have used since time immemorial, if you speak out of turn, it is considered rude. So I would actually put forward that discussing things, talking, role-playing, conversing, doing everything, we actually do it in turns naturally as human beings. And to say that it's an artificial imposition on a game group, to me is just silly. The turn is the way of the DM ensuring everyone speaks. Now you can do your turn just like this, which is how I do my games. Or you can do your turns dun, 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 like this. I almost drew a pentagram, which is kind of what I wanted to do. But you could have initiative order. Or you could have some stat, like, I don't know, your turn stat, I don't know. So what if this guy over here, it's his turn, and he's sort of saying something, but this guy has an interesting bit of RP to contribute. Now, of course, there are going to be reactions from people. You can't just tell someone who it's not their turn, you can't laugh. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. But fundamentally speaking, this guy kind of needs to keep quiet. You're kind of looking at this type of situation right here. There, that's what's happening on your turn. And so when it's this guy's turn, it's not that the other players disappear, but I do not want them taking the moment. Now, we've all seen people play who are a little less comfortable with role-playing in general, right? And so they tend to lean back on some of this stuff. Turns helps this as well, because you can zero a person and say, what are you doing on this turn, or what are you saying? And they don't feel that they have to aggressively overtalk or dominate the rest of the group to have their moment, because you as the DM are awesome about keeping the turns going. And likewise, we've all seen DMs who talk too much. It's like always their turn. It's annoying. So if you're playing in turns, the same rules apply to you as the DM. You say your little piece and keep that wheel turning. Now, this is easy to do during combat. It's a little more nuanced to do during sort of social play or role play. So really, there are two big answers to the question that was asked today. The first one is to create a mechanical enforcement for your role play. There are mechanical consequences and outcomes to role-playing, and it needs to be consistent and applied with fairness. And over time, players begin to detect it and game it, and that's when you're in the magic zone. Our second big one is like turns are the sort of linchpin of keeping RP and social encounters moving. Don't be a jerk about it. You must follow Wheaton's law, right? Do not be a dick. But you will be that beacon of camaraderie that keeps the fairness moving around. Now, it's going to be a hair artificial. Yes. But this whole thing is artificial. We're playing a tabletop game here. It's okay to be a little bit artificial and to expedite things, to move them forward. And then the big one that I sort of want to warn against, that I want to call out as, to me, not the best way to do this, is to have hidden facts or knowledge inside an NPC and to use in-character conversation to get players to extract that. I think that's the sort of the worst form of this, because it's very strange and awkward and also hard to tell if you're doing right and can really drag out. Whew. Now, there's probably a bunch of edge cases here, like let's use the charisma stat, let's do some intimidate rolls that are verses and all kinds of stuff like that. Yes, that's part of all of this stuff. I am talking in a much higher sort of theoretical framework. Why? Why am I even discussing this? Because what I would like to do is help or potentially facilitate the exposure of some of the sort of hidden or unspoken truths of the table. Right? Everybody says, ooh, I want a game with like plenty of RP in it. Oh man, this is like intrigue. We're going to be in Waterdeep all the time, like talking to all these merchants and shit. It's going to be so cool, right? But what about that really is cool? I mean, on the one hand, if you're the DM, okay, you hear your players getting excited about being in Waterdeep for 5 sessions. What the hell are you going to do? Just make up a bunch of voices and just have a good time with it? No, you want some kind of game to happen, right? And I think a lot of times a bunch of this stuff is unspoken. Hey, thanks, Jamie. Exactly what's cool about RP? What's fun about it? Why do people say, oh yeah, I want plenty of RP. I want plenty of social encounters in my game. What really does that mean and imply? I would like this little talk to help you see through what they might be saying. Because my guess is they're not saying they want to make hour-long speeches and be answered with brilliant soliloquies and monologues from NPCs on the DM. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is their RP has mechanical consequence that can be decoded, that can be felt, that can be played. Played. That's the key. Not that they want to play this big, long guessing game in funny accents. Now, it can be part of it. But remember, survival and role play, they're one. You making it depends upon the mechanical outcome of what you say and do. But only if, as a DM, you're ready to make that stick. You're ready to lay that grout. And it can be nuanced and it can be difficult. I would argue it's probably the most elusive part of our hobby, is to do what I just described. I would say that 1 in 10 of my games, I accomplish a little bit of this. And I've been playing for decades. It's a very nuanced thing we're describing. And I think that's why you'll hear players say things like, ooh, I love a lot of RP in my game. I love that stuff. Doesn't mean they want to, necessarily dress in costume or something. So the sort of the deeper theoretical construct of what this is, I think is useful for us as dungeon masters to see ways to make it more fun. So that really is what I had to say. Is make your social encounter just as deadly as combat. And then down here, or a trap. Also, make it just as simple. Now, role-playing, by definition, is a nuanced and complex concept, but you, doing your prep as a dungeon master, you cannot deal with complex concepts. At least I know I can't. I got too many things going on. I need to bulletify this stuff. That's going to be our final piece of the talk. How do I do bullets to prepare this kind of gameplay? Well, first step, draw some stinking blobs. Okay, we're going to do 4 bullets. And this is for the social encounter that I'm running in my game tonight. Okay, so the king doubts the heroes. That's already pretty laden with hidden meaning. But let's get to all that. Let's unpack it in a second. Remember, you just fill in your bullets as if you know what you're talking about. Then you unpack it when you go back. Let it flow first. The king doubts the heroes. The court hates the king. A fortune to the victor, and a boy seeks a master. This is all one encounter. Now you're just like, Ingrid, what the heck are you talking about? Okay, let's unpack it. Let's unpack it. Stay calm. I don't even know what I'm talking about. First of all, I want to go here first. Remember, I kind of think not necessarily in linear ways. Like sometimes the third thing is actually the first thing. A fortune to the victor. So we must do a mighty errand, right? And there's a fortune in it. So let's just be corny about it and say slay a dragon. Okay, so there's a dragon that needs to be slain. Our heroes are the people to do it. You're damn right. I mean, I even bring that up. You know the players are going to want to do it. And he who can slay Durothrax will be showered in wealth for 100 years. Okay? Great. I have buy-in from my players. But here's the thing. Durothrax is only out of her lair for a few days every year to feed. And that happens to be right now. We have only about a day and a half to even have a chance to find her and try to bring her down. So right away, there's no time for this conversation to take place. We can't be hanging out at court for 5 hours when there's only 20 hours left that Durothrax will be out of her lair. Okay, so that's my first piece. Fortune to the victor. Now, to go and to accept this errand and to get what little information there is about Durothrax, the players are going to need to visit the king, King Henrik, right? And okay, I'm just going with this. I don't know where this is coming from. When they go to see him, I only have really one bullet about the king. I don't know shit about my king. We've never had my king in any game. I've never played King Henrik. I don't know anything about him. Okay, you don't have to. Let it all go. Stay calm. I have my bullet right here. The king doubts them. So they come into court. I describe the scene to them. You're in the great hall of King Henrik. Marble effigies of kings from the past line the walls. Your voices echo on the ceiling, which is so high above you, it's gloomy with smoke from the fireplace. And courtesans and dukes and princesses are gathered in the shadows near the colonnade, waiting to see the king's reaction to your claim that you are the ones to bring down Durathrax. The king rises from his throne, he looks at the players, and he says, You? You expect to bring down Durathrax? But you're a rabble! Nevertheless, it could be entertaining to watch you die. There you go. So I go back in here. My little sub-bullet is, he doubts they'll live. He doesn't doubt like that they're awesome. Or he doesn't doubt, that they're, being honest or any of this stuff. He actually thinks like, you're going to freaking die. Like you have no chance of beating this thing. That's the only social note I need on the king. Now the whole time, the court, if they're engaged by the players, I only know one thing about the court. I'm not even going to name all the different dukes and princesses and everything. But everyone that gets asked, especially in private, will tell you that the king is kind of a jerk. He kind of treats everybody like this. He doubts everybody. And they would actually love to see him eat some crow. There you go. Embarrassed is a much simpler way to say eat crow. So I don't say all the nuance of all these courtesans and characters. I don't create their backstories. I don't know who they are or what they know or what they don't know. None of it matters. All that matters is that they are kind of against the king. And if the king doubts that the heroes are even going to live through this, that makes it in the court's interest to help the heroes. You see? And so what we've just done is made it mechanical. The choice that the players may make to engage the court, not just the king, could result in a mechanical advantage. They could find out, there's this freaking spear that this one duke has, and he'll let you guys borrow it just so he can watch the king squirm a little bit. But if the characters, the heroes, the players, never engage the court, they don't get this little mechanical advantage. Finally, a boy seeks a master. So while this whole encounter is going down, as the DM, you can mention, also skulking around in this little corner, sort of peeking out now and again, there's a little boy. And he just won't take his eyes off of the heroes. And he's actually like signaling to them. Now, if it's just an annoying boy and they just move on, okay, fine. But if they go and they talk to the boy, he's actually sort of almost paralyzed with intimidation and awe for these heroes. But he basically just says, "May I join your quest? I'm a knight," and he pulls out his wooden sword, right? And you're like, dude, you're going to get hurt. Why don't you just stay here? And if they do that little bit of engagement, they get puppy dog. They're going to think they keep getting rid of this boy, and the boy's going to keep popping up. He follows them to the lair of Durathrax. I mean, now you've got a new mechanical component that was born of role-playing. If they just, tend to brush off smaller characters and things like this, then that's fine too. They can go battle the dragon. Rock on with your bad self. But if they like this kind of thing, social nuance, then it mechanically comes into their game. The little boy could be a fascinating mechanic in a dragon battle. I mean, unless you just have a-hole players who don't care if they see a little 7-year-old boy get burnt to a crisp. And if you have players like that, none of the stuff I'm talking about in this stream is interesting. Those players are wretched. I don't hang out with those people. That's it. I sort of used what I was talking about through the stream to create myself a little encounter. And I don't have to do speeches here and accents and everything. What I'm looking for is, will characters or players take little bits of bait, social bait, RP bait, and bite on it and thereby gain or lose mechanical components to the play that's to come. And with all this smoke in the air, it is extremely hard to talk this much, so I'm going to have to end this stream right stinking now. Thanks everybody for tuning in. That is just some thoughts and feelings that I have about RP and social encounters. I hope that it is illuminating and helpful to you guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in. 116 people, that's a very big stream, especially for a weekday morning. That's insane. Wherever you are in the world right now, I hope it's a little less smoky than here, because I think we're going to be wearing respirators if this keeps up. And hey, Jason Roy, thanks. Now, you are going to have to live life without old Ingrid Bernal here for a little while. I'm going to be on a journey of discovery. I would invite all of you to keep your eye on the Runehammer.games Facebook page, because I'm going to be streaming live to my Facebook page as I undertake the first grand adventure of Runehammer. Now, just as a quickie version of the announcement here on the stream, it has been a dream of mine to go and take Runehammer out into the world and explore ancient sites for the sake of deeper understanding about this sort of fantasy world that we all dream of. I wanted to actually go out into the ancient world, or what's left of it, and feel it for myself, to walk on those ancient stones. And so you may have been seeing some little hints that I've been dropping here and there, but this journey that I'm going to go on is going to begin in Athens. And so I will be going to Athens, and I will be live streaming from the Acropolis, from the Parthenon. It's going to be absolutely mind-blowing. And just keep an eye on Facebook for Runehammer.games, and that's where you'll see my live streams popping up from the ancient ruins of Greece. So, I hope to see you guys on those live streams. Namaste, bro. Keep it real. Don't steal, and Ingrid Bernal always gonna give you a deal. Okay, everybody? So I'll see you soon, and let's all get out there and make this world just a tiny bit better than it was yesterday. Okay, and then also play D&D a little more better. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Talk to you soon. One love, peace, and all that good stuff. Oh na no, oh na no, hey, oh na no. Oh, no, hey. What you doing, man? I'm in Azkaban. Yo, what you doing, man? I'm kicking in Azkaban. I say, what you doing, man? I'm in Azkaban. Yeah. I'm in Azkaban. Yeah. I'm in Azkaban. Yeah. I'm in Azkaban.